what I'm talking about. But that's just an example. And then developing self-confidence. Self-confidence is about an authentic presence, being comfortable with yourself, ready for challenges, aware and comfortable with your personal brand. And self-awareness really is about, if you understand yourself, then you begin to understand who you are, what you're capable of, what is beyond your comfort zone, what are the things that, a lot of times, for instance, you find that people who are, let's say, learned, they feel as though that it's their duty to answer every single question somebody asks. Yeah? So somebody comes, that I've just graduated from University of Medina, and I'm back, I'm fresh, I'm here giving a lecture. And then a guy raises his hand and says, so explain to me Darwin's theory of evolution. And how does it relate to Islam? And then, so what happens then? It's a knee-jerk reaction, isn't it? Astaghfirullah, and this. What is happening to our younger generation? Then you go off on a tangent, all right? Not knowing well that hold on, there's nothing in any of my fiqh book that discusses Darwin's theory of evolution, and I have little knowledge about this. And it's about trying to understand, where your limit is. Not because you are here and you expected to be a specialist on a subject, does it mean that you say, well, look, and try to answer that question. It could be said that, that's a very interesting question. And I think it's something that ought to be addressed. But really, my training, at this point, I haven't had the opportunity yet. I haven't had the opportunity yet to be able to study it in the type of detail and to give you the type of answer that I think that you deserve. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bear that question. I'm going to write it down now. And I'm going to come back to you in a week's time or when we meet next. And I'm going to discuss it in far more detail than that will well satisfy you. So, so can you see? Can you see the difference? In other words, I'm not ignorant as you. I'm no better. But can you see? You think about the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? He was being asked questions by Jibril in that famous hadith number 2. When the hadith about Islam and Iman and Ihsan. Okay? And then what did Jibril ask about? He asked about a number of things, but he also asked about, tell me about as-sa'a, about the hour, isn't it? As-sa'a. And what did he say? The one who you are asking knows more than the one who is who's been asked. And this is the thing, it was a pure acknowledgement of, oh, I don't know. And saying that I don't know, for many people, when they say I don't know, they feel that it's a feeling of inferiority, or but really, when you say I don't know, what you don't often realize is that people have far more respect for you than when you begin to blab about something that you have no knowledge about, and that people can see straight through. Okay, so how much of an iceberg do you see? How do you think that? How much of that is that iceberg occupying? Yeah. How does it compare to the other one? That iceberg. What's the size of that iceberg compared to the other one? Huh? You don't know? Well, you can see it, isn't it?
On the surface is just a fraction of the entire iceberg.
Are you sure? It could be nothing under the surface.
Nothing at all. That's what you don't know.
Right.
So, looking at the surface.
Okay, so that's the iceberg. Okay? That's the iceberg. Okay. This is the iceberg here. All right? What you saw on the surface was just a small thing. Okay? So, on top of the surface, what you can see is this. You can see competency, okay, how competent the person is. You notice their behavior. And all of these are necessary for top performance, but they are not sufficient. So, competency and behavior. But what you can't see, okay, are all of the things which are beneath. So when we talk about self-awareness, And self-regulation and motivation and empathy and social skills, all of these are required for longer-term success. And these are the things which come from within. You know, yesterday we talked about burying yourself, and then you know, what you can't see, you need to be able to bury yourself in an isolation, and then before things come up from beneath. It's about trying to understand all of those things. If you can master the skills which are beneath the surface, then what will come out will be competency and use and behaviors. And these are the things which are required. Some people try to develop competency and change their behavior without changing themselves and understanding themselves. And that's where they fail. So asking deep questions. So when we think about self-awareness, as one of the brothers mentioned, Ahmed mentioned, is that we ask ourselves questions like, who am I? And who am I is a question of identity, the search for authenticity. That's what it's about. And that's why people become so confused about themselves. They don't know who they are, and they're continuously in a search for identity. When you ask yourself the question, why am I? This is a question of purpose, the search for meaning of life. What is the meaning of what I am here, what I'm doing? Why has God put me in, amidst, in a state of poverty, amidst so many people, put me in this place? This is a search for meaning in life, and these are the questions that need to be answered. And also, when you ask yourself the question, what will I spend my life on? Now, having answered the first two, this is a question, what are you going to occupy yourself in? And that is the search for your mission in life. And these three questions, we can put and we can relate with those three questions when we think about the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. When we think about when he was in that cave that we spoke about. It was also a question about his identity, or trying to understand who he was. It was about trying to find what was the real purpose in his life. Is it what I'm doing now? He was doing all of the different things that you can think about when it came to social engagement, when it comes to personal development, when it comes to being a source of mercy, to all of the different things that we can think about that he was, before he became a messenger, he was doing. But what the first revelation gave him was that sense of purpose in life, real purpose in his life. He realized that it was something beyond and above that which he was engaged in. And he found that when the revelation came to him. Okay, so how can we increase our self-awareness? And this here, I want to put some ideas to you. I think in the last session in January, we went through the Johari's window, isn't it? We went through the Johari's window. Everybody's familiar with the Johari's window? We went through the Johari's window. So I'm not going to go into it in more detail. But this is the Johari's window. It's about trying to be what others know of yourself and what you know of yourself, and whether they synchronize or not. And it's broken down into 4 different groups. So it's broken down into self-disclosure, exposure, and so forth and so on. And this is important in terms of us being able to ask and to tell, to be able to develop our self-awareness. So I'm not going to go into this. So I want you now to begin. So we've spoken about all, and you know all different type of Islamic practices that you use regularly. So I want to show you now how you can use what you would normally use to develop self-awareness. And the first is that the Quran. Where are you heading? And this is one of the things about the Quran. The Quran is taking you on a journey. And it's a journey to be able to find your sense of direction, find your sense of purpose in your life, being able to relate yourself with the Quran. And the second one is that we spoke about yesterday, is that of tadabbur and tafakkur. Tadabbur and tafakkur, which is reflective practices. Reflective practices, all these things about self-awareness, and if you read the world, for instance, Professor Malik Badri. Everybody familiar with Professor Malik Badri? Familiar with Professor Malik Badri, by the Wazir? But all of you should read the works of Professor Malik Badri. There are some YouTube videos by Professor Malik Badri. He's quite old now, but he's written a book. One of his first books that came out was called The Dilemma of Muslim Psychologists. He's written also the book called Islam and Alcoholism. But most recently, he's published a book called Contemplation. It's called Contemplation, which is a translation of a classic work from Arabic into English. And that book is very, very much about this idea of tadabbur and tafakkur, about reflective practice. And what you would find is that how many of you listen on a regular basis to TED Talks? Okay, a lot of you, yeah? Listen to TED Talks? Excellent. TED Talks is one of the most brilliant platforms you can find for getting new ideas and new exposure and so on. But very often what you would notice on TED Talks is this. Somebody will give a talk on, let's say, on reflective practice. A brilliant talk. They have this idea. So they've gotten this concept called reflective practice. And then they say, you know what? I'll do some research on reflective practice. So I'll interview 100 people who are successful in their lives and ask them if they engage in reflective practice. And then they compile all the results on it. And then, so they do research on this and that. Then they think about something and do a bit of research. So they've done that for a period of time. Then what they do is then they're able now to frame a talk or a presentation and themselves as being an expert on reflective practice.